But for me, if you zoom out of that, it's really about the end person and the value add that you give to those individuals.
Welcome back to the Missoula podcast. In studio with the best, Brandon Smith. How are you?
Good. The best is Mike Allen.
That's true.
We've been, I feel like years trying to get Mike in here and on the pod.
Why have you been avoiding us, Mike?
I haven't been avoiding you guys at all, actually. Was on the list to come here last week, got sick, didn't have the best voice. I want to be my top performance for you guys. So today's the day.
Well, welcome to the studio, man. Excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, let's start at the obvious. Mike, how did you first come to Missoula, Montana?
So I recently came back to Montana for this job that I'm in currently, but I grew up in Dillon, Montana, went to high school there, kind of a transplant in a lot of ways because I was born in Colorado. I'm sure we'll get into my story a little bit more, but I was born in Colorado and then moved to Dillon, Montana when I was 1. And then parents got divorced when I was 5, moved to North Idaho, bounced around, lived in Texas. I feel like I'm like a transplant to everywhere. And so when people say, where are you from? It's like, I'm from the Northwest. I don't know. So I'm kind of from all over the place, but I claim Montana, love Montana. Even got a tattoo of Montana on me. So I'm just through and through a Montana boy at the end of the day. And
do we want to know where that tattoo is?
Underarm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bicep.
All right. Growing up in Dillon, I guess at 1, you moved to Dillon. Probably don't remember that move.
Yep.
Very well. Went through high school. What was it like growing up in rural Montana?
Yeah, I mean, you get that small town feel. There's so many small towns across Montana. So you definitely have like that small town feel where everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
I was there from 1 to 5, but really Dillon has a soft space in my heart because when I moved back when I was 13, that's like when, as a man, that's kind of where you grow the most through your teenage years. And so that's where I met people like Steven and got into sports, and Coach Terry Thomas was a big influence in my life. And yeah, I mean, everybody knows everybody. Sports was a huge thing in our life and had a great culture around that as well. And learned a lot of things that I still carry towards my career today.
That is one of the, I guess, repetitive things I hear about Dillon. It's like Coach Thomas, the just sports, the culture of the young men. I mean, and the accolades, the state championships, basketball, football. I mean, there's an incredible culture, incredible, I guess, influence from coaches, mentors, teachers into the young people in Dillon, Montana. What is it about that community that keeps that culture year after year? Because these stories all are the same that come out of Dillon.
Yeah, I think that program, the way that Coach Terry Thomas operated that was almost like a Division I kind of stance. Like they built up that culture and you knew it coming in when you were 13 years old that you were leading up to be on varsity eventually. And so they had just this really great culture of standards and procedures that you had to go throughout the 4 years that you were there. And by the time you got onto the varsity team, whether that be junior or some sophomore year, you just knew what the standards were. And so it was a lot of structure in that. And so even like getting out of that high school program, going into college, I played for the University of Montana Western for a year. I felt like that structure that they had there and that culture at that NAIA school wasn't as good as our high school standards. And so, yeah, it's very unique. And I mean, obviously there are state championships and things like that kind of play into that. And the scoreboard takes care of itself. You have those standards in place. So yeah, it was an awesome experience.
Jumping further ahead in your story, but some of those standards, that culture that were invested in you, how have they shaped you into who you are today?
Yeah, I think it's like the foundational things. It's like showing up on time, looking a man in the eye, giving a good firm handshake, all those kind of basic level foundational things.
Which you did all 3 of those coming into the studio today.
Oh,
shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and we're early. So.
Yeah.
Well done, Dillon.
Yeah. So, I mean, just like the little things, like showing up on time to meetings, being accountable, answering your phone, like being accountable to your customers and people that you're involved with. It makes a big difference because a lot of people just kind of put those things to the side, but those are really like the foundational things that help drive success.
What was the main qualities in Coach Thomas that you were trying to emulate into your life more than just those procedures that you went through? Like, what was it about him that you want to be more like?
Yeah, Coach Thomas did a really good way of living his life as far as you have to have this immense respect for the guy because of the accolades. He kind of put himself in this position where it's like you just admired him so much. And for me and you, Steven, like not having great male role models in our life, he was one of those guys that you had a standard that he upheld himself to, and you just had immense respect for him. So respect. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, where did, it feels weird because I know the answers to these questions. So tell us about the transition from Dillon into the real world. What were some of the challenges that you went through? Where did your life take you?
Yeah. I mean, coming out of Dillon, back in those days, it was basically like agriculture. I think COVID like changed the game as far as where you can live, and a lot of remote people that are working in remote places that allows you to have, a sufficient income. But back in those days, you really didn't have that. And so I knew to grow and to be able to make an income and do something beyond what Dillon could provide, I had to get out. And so, I mean, I was telling Steven this, we were taking a walk this morning, and I was like, literally the day that I got my degree from the University of Montana Western, I left. I didn't walk. I was just like, I'm out. So I went out to Spokane. I worked for a clinical research company, and kind of the whole aspect of how I got into what I'm doing now today is my mom is a physician's assistant. So she works with pharmaceutical reps, and she was always like, you got to be a pharma rep. You got to get into this industry. And so I kind of fought that for many, many years. And my dad was a construction worker and blue collar guy. And, he worked general contracting for many, many years. And so I helped him out with that throughout high school and even college. And I got to the point where it's like, I got a degree. I got to go utilize this. And so I got a job doing clinical research, and then left that position and went and got a medical sales job that took me down to Colorado. And I worked down there for 2.5 years doing that. And that's what kind of got my foot into the industry. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry as a whole, it's really difficult to get into. But once you get in there, you start making connections, and, your sales plays a big role in, the direction that you go. So once you get into this kind of community, there's a lot more avenues that you can go to. And so that's kind of what got my foot in the door in the industry, at least.
Why is it so difficult to get into the industry? Why is it so competitive?
Yeah, I mean, I think because it's a professional role, the pay structure is pretty high. And so they're not just going to take your average Joe. Like, there has to be a lot of sales experience. And so my biggest frustration was trying to get into the industry where it's like, you don't have sales experience, but you need sales experience to get into the industry. And so you do all sorts of different things to get that. And I think they have, I keep going back to the word standards, but they have pretty high standards as far as who they're hiring on. And, you're dealing with doctors, you're dealing with these high-end professionals where you need to know the lingo and you need to understand what you're selling and how that's benefiting the patient at the end of the day. And so it's a pretty, professional career.
So you said your mom was a PA and told you to go down this route, but what was it about sales that attracted you to that lifestyle? Because a lot of people run the opposite way from sales. They don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah. Well, I think like sales is one of those professions that could potentially intimidate a lot of people. But when I first got into the medical device sales, I didn't have a whole lot of great leadership. And so I sought that out through podcasts and through Zig Ziglar's and Les Brown's and all these, motivational speakers. That was a huge driver for me. And, we have so many different avenues that we can utilize in today. And, the click of a button, you can get the best mentor in the whole entire world. And so I kind of sought that out significantly. And it's also a really high paid profession, right? And so you get to kind of kill what you eat or eat what you kill. And so sales is a big, opportunity for good income, but it's also the bigger effect of that is changing people's lives. And like I said, the impact that you have on the patients or the impact that you have on your prospects. So sales is typically a money driver, but for me, if you zoom out of that, it's really about the end person and the value add that you give to those individuals.
Mike, what'd you go to school for? What was your degree?
Business administration and small business management.
Okay. And what was your first big boy job after school? Where'd you land?
Yeah, the first kind of big boy job was that clinical research side of the things. And that was an interesting role because you kind of get to see the back end curtains of pharmaceutical companies and how they integrate with these testing facilities to get the FDA approval for their drugs. And so you have a test subjects that come in there and they take the protocol of that procedure, and you have to go through a very, very strict procedure to get it qualified. And so it's a lot of paperwork and it's a lot of the things that I didn't really enjoy, but it was cool to see. And it's kind of interesting to see how much money goes into those procedures to get the FDA approval process and what that looks like from a pharmaceutical perspective. So it's pretty interesting, but it wasn't really a sales role. It's more of like an admin role. And so from there, I got into sales, and that was more of like medical device sales. And it was for long-term healthcare facilities and assisted livings. And, I'd call on those people. We had a team of phlebotomists and a team of x-ray techs that would go out to there. And so I was kind of managing that team, but also selling the devices to these facilities on the side as well.
Will you simplify for me medical device sales? 'Cause maybe I'm alone on this, but what really are you selling?
Yeah. So the medical device is kind of like a big, broad umbrella of what that potentially could be. So it's a huge industry, and that could be for hospitals. That could be for, skilled nurse facilities, assisted livings. That could be for medical spas. I mean, it's just medical FDA approved devices that can go into any of these facilities essentially. So it's kind of a broad umbrella term of medical devices. It could be a whole host of things. Even like surgeries, there's Stryker is a big company that's out of Michigan, I believe. And they do a lot of like procedures for surgeries. And so, it's a big broad term essentially.
So you're selling like from beds to scalpels to lighting, like.
Yeah. So for what we were selling, so this company called Scriber Medical, and it's was created by a guy named Mark Scriber, and he started it from ground zero. And you'll kind of learn this throughout my career path. I've always worked for these small time family owned companies, which has been a really big blessing. But Mark Scriber started this company out in Denver, Colorado, and was kind of just focused on skilled nurse facilities and assisted livings. And so, you sell in beds and kind of like the basic needs for those facilities. But then also he saw a need for phlebotomists and a need for x-ray techs. And instead of sending those patients out to the hospitals to get their x-rays, we just sent a team of x-ray techs there. So it was convenience at the end of the day.
What were you really bad at when you first got into sales? And then how did you get better at that?
I think communication is a big one. The cool thing about sales is that you're always evolving. Like there's never an end point where it's like, I got it figured out, right? Like you're always consistently growing, and communication is a big point. Just discussing with the patient, taking yourself outside of the overall meeting and finding out what the true value is for the customer. And then, in my case now, the patient ultimately, and slowing down your pace of speed. And I shared this with you, Stephen, a couple weeks ago, but when I was in pharmaceutical sales, you're meeting with dermatology offices or these big doctors, and you might have 5 seconds with these people. And so you need to spit out everything that you're needing to say to them in a very fast paced way. And so now in my current role, I'm meeting with business owners on a daily basis, and you're having these conversations with them one-on-one, just like this. And it's more slow pace. It's more of like getting a good understanding of where they're at, what their needs are, what their expectations are, and how we can meet those needs. So it's slowing down, and, like I said, sales is always evolving, ever growing. And that's what I do love about it.
Rapid fire questions.
Ooh.
Already ready for this, Mike?
I think so.
Okay.
What's your first initial memory of Missoula, Montana?
So first initial memory of Missoula, Montana was actually kind of the meeting point. So when my parents got divorced, my dad was in Dillon, my mom was in North Idaho. And so we would always meet in Missoula to do like the switch of the kids and do that. And so we always met on Reserve Street, this gas station down there, and we'd always switch at that point. But a better story of that is, so Steven, less traumatic. Yeah. Steve took me out to a Grizz football game when I was 13 years old. And we had these seats and we were right behind these season ticket holder guys that had big, long beards. You guys might know who they are. I'm not sure, but they always hold this big sign up. And every time the Grizz got a first down, they'd always go, move the chains, move the chains. And so just like having that experience at Washington Grizzly Stadium, I was like, this place is amazing. And I just fell in love with it. So
what's your favorite coffee shop in Missoula?
So this is going to be a funny one. I travel for my job. I cover the whole state of Montana. The best coffee that you can get is Town Pump. Okay. And I'm going to explain myself. So Town Pump, they're located all over the state of Montana, and you get nice hot coffee. But here's the kicker. You got to get French vanilla, and the cappuccino machine is a topper. So you fill up your coffee 3/4 and then you fill the rest of it with French vanilla. It's a game changer.
Gonna have to try it.
You have to try it.
Yeah.
What's the best or your favorite restaurant in Missoula?
Plaza Azteca. It is fire.
So good.
The birria tacos. Oh my goodness.
We were just talking about those yesterday. It's amazing.
Dude, they're so good. Yeah.
Amazing.
Steve like introduced me to that and I went there one time. I'm hooked. It is so good. It's so good.
What zip code do you live in?
59847.
What do you love most about Missoula?
Obviously kind of people's go-to is the diversity of Missoula, but it is true. Like I've walked downtown and seen a person in a cowboy hat and flip-flops at the same time. It's very confusing, but the diversity, the uniqueness about Missoula is always unique to me. And it's cool that we have such a diverse community here.
So come up with a different answer, but what's the weirdest part of Missoula?
Oh, the weirdest part of Missoula, probably all your pet deer you guys have here. Like where I grew up in Dillon, Montana, if a deer comes in your yard, it's probably going to get shot.
Right.
So there's that. But then I turn around a corner and there's literally 100 deer in somebody's yard. They're just chilling.
Isn't it crazy? Like how there's days where you really don't see deer. And then there's days where like, I feel like they just all come out like in the neighborhood and they're just everywhere.
Well, we have a saying, the elk are where you find them.
It's true.
So
it's true.
same is true for deer, I assume.
Exactly. Well, growing up here, there used to be squirrels everywhere.
Okay.
And now it's just deer, like these urban deer.
Well, maybe the
like,
deer ate the squirrels.
Could be. Mike, is there a particular book that you've read that has made a significant impact on your life?
Yeah. I mean, I think in sales, like I said, it's always you're trying to grow and improve. One of the biggest books that I've read and had a big influence on my life was A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was in the Nazi Germany camps, concentration camps, and his whole thing was really how do you survive through suffering and the meaning of suffering and what that can do for you in your life. So that was a big one. And then another one was The Go-Giver. I think who did write that?
Bob Berg.
Yes. And so that's kind of going over the 5 laws of stratospheric success. And
great book, easy read.
Yeah. And great for sales professionals out there. Highly recommend that one.
Why do you think you resonate so much with the Go-Giver of trying to add value to people's life? Why is that important to you?
I mean, I think it's selfish at the end of the day, right? Like what I give to other people, what I'm able to provide for other people comes back to me tenfold. And if you can kind of displace what's in it for me monetarily, and really focus on the customer, the patient, the end result for those people, it's just like, you walk across and you see somebody that's homeless and you give them $5. That might not change that person's life, but it does make you feel, that you're able to support somebody, to help somebody out. Sales is kind of the same way in that. And I just feel like when you make a big sale, it's the rush of that too, right? It's like, I've helped this person. You got a strategic plan to help them out long-term. And in my current role, what's great about my role, it's, and this is where it kind of differs between like device sales. Device reps typically come in there, they'll sell a device and then they move on to the next. Where my role is really, I bring in our portfolio and then I kind of prolong that because I get paid on reoccurring business. So you're constantly trying to work with those accounts, make sure that no competitors are coming in, how you can still market share, how you can support those people, creating promotions, events. And so I wear a lot of hats in my role, but it's really about relationships at the end of the day.
I was just going to ask about that. Let's talk about what you do now. Like, what is your role? What does your day-to-day look like? And
yeah, so for the past 6 years, I've worked for a company called Merz Aesthetics, and it's a aesthetic company based out of Germany. And it's a global company. We're in like 6 or 7 different continents. Our headquarters is in Raleigh, North Carolina. And we kind of have a huge arm of options for med spas specifically. And so I typically call on med spas or dermatology offices or plastic surgery offices. And what's unique about Merz is that we can, help out with about 96% of a medical spa's needs at the end of the day. So like I said, we have a bunch of arms, and we have a injectable arm where we have neuromodulators and facial fillers, and that's what I focus on. But then we have a device division as well. We have a skincare, medical grade skincare line. So we have a whole host of different options for these businesses. And so, they can really utilize Merz and kind of just stop at utilizing us, or stop, at one-stop shop, if you will, which is kind of nice. And so like I said, I focus on the cosmetic injection side. So I sell the neuromodulators and the facial fillers. And
Mike, when I think about cosmetic injectables, I think about like the Real Housewives of OC, or I don't even know the show.
You watch Salt Lake. Right?
Salt Lake, yeah.
Real Life is the one you watch.
Is that the typical clientele that are going to these med spas and doing the beauty products, and kind of walk us through who the typical people are? Or how do I have that wrong?
No, I think you have it right and you have it wrong, I think. So, you definitely have, what
he wants to know is he an ideal candidate for some fillers?
Yeah. Get you some neuromodulators, some jawline contouring. Yeah, we can do that for you.
I've been thinking you need a little bit of jawline contouring.
For sure.
So Stephen, you have it right. There's a lot of those people that want just like a cosmetic feel, right? And they want to feel and look younger. And there's that aspect of it, but there's also a therapeutic space for this as well. And so there's kind of two arms of what I do. So I'm in the cosmetic space, and it's all a cash business. So patients come in here, they get their cosmetic treatments, they pay cash. But we also have a therapeutic division where there's therapeutic indications for our products. And this is like your TMJ, your migraines, your chronic sialorrhea, which is like chronic sweating. There's a lot of different variations that neurotoxins can help out with those things. And that would be, insurance would be able to cover those things. So the big thing in med spa space right now is weight loss. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen anything about that. GLP-1s, Ozempic.
The Ozempic, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So when patients do those procedures and go through those type of products, they lose a ton of weight. And so there's a lot of skin laxity. And so that's where a product like ours would come in, called Radiesse. And so it's a facial filler. It's a volumizing filler, but it's unique because it's a calcium-based product. So it's integrates into the tissue very, very well. It creates your own type 1, type 3 collagen and elastin, and it also gives you a good fill as well. And so any of that skin laxity on like the facial structure gets filled. And so there's a lot of use cases for our injectable portfolio, but there's a whole host of different people that would, participate in that.
What are some misconceptions about the cosmetic injection space?
I think the biggest misconception is people don't want to be overdone. And so back in the day when, injections just kind of started coming out, people had this mindset of like, I don't want to look like I'm from Southern California, blown up, not look natural. And so the whole industry is really going more towards a natural feel, more natural look. And Merz was kind of ahead of the game in that, because all of our products, that's really what we try to emulate, is that natural feel and look. Now, it depends on your injector. It depends on the education, depends on what the patients want and like and need. But we're always going for that natural feel. We don't want to make you look overdone. We want to make you feel like your younger self. And so if we can rewind the clock back 10 years, that's what we're going for, or 5 years, whatever the patient wants. So.
What do you love most about your job? I mean, outside of, sales, being able to make money, but what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I do is I sell cosmetic injections, right? It's not like I'm not changing the world, but at the end of the day, like I look at myself as a consultant, right? And so that's what I really enjoy about my job. And so I get to sit down with business owners, and my wife's a business owner. I know what it takes to be a good business owner, to be successful in a business. And at the end of the day, a lot of these business owners, especially in rural places in Montana, they are wearing a lot of hats. They're doing the marketing, they're doing the sales, they're doing the books, they're doing all sorts of things. And so it's kind of nice for somebody like me that has a great product, a great service, to come in there and help them out on a consultative perspective and kind of zoom out on their business and say, hey, I can help you out with this. I do events for you. We can run promotions. We can get your price point down. We can give you guys some samples to help out with patient integration into the practice. There's a lot of things that I can kind of implement and kind of support them in their overall business that just takes some off their plate. And so I like the consultative aspect of it.
How did your dad feel about you not being a blue collar guy and being in the cosmetics?
You're not swinging a hammer, but you're selling Botox.
Yeah. I don't think that's the route he wanted me to go.
Is he a proud dad right now?
Yeah. No, I think he is proud. I mean, honestly, because he's my dad. He's worked construction for 45 years. I've seen his body just break down. I've seen him up on roofs when it's negative 10 degrees. I've been up there with him.
Yeah.
And it's, he never wanted that for me. Is there a great opportunity in the skill set of contracting and plumbing and electrical work? Absolutely. Is there a need for it? Absolutely. And people can make a great living doing that. I just went a different route. But I think overall he's pretty proud of me. Yeah. So
it is hard work. It's freezing.
Yeah.
We had somebody on the show recently that similar grew up, dad a contractor, and we're like, nope, but doesn't mean you're adverse to hard work. Because obviously you've challenges of trying to get into the industry, learning, working on those sales skills without any real mentor. That it probably all comes back to some of those early days in Dillon, Montana. The culture, the just hard work, showing up for practice early in the morning. Sounds like that has all really shaped you into who you are today, regardless if it's injectables or construction.
My dad taught me a lot too, is hard work and work ethic. That's something that I've carried on with me to this day. And I remember working for Scriber Medical. I also covered New Mexico for some time. And so I'd be down there in the summer times and you'd see people up on roofs. It's 110 degrees. And it's like, dude, I've been there. I feel for you, man. Like I almost have like this sense of guilt that I've gotten into some of these roles where it's like, in our industry, there's a lot of people that complain at times. And, I know what hard work is. I don't feel like I'm working hard, but I'm making a great living. And so there's a huge thing of gratitude there too. But I think like putting that in perspective of like knowing what hard work is and that I've done the hard work for many, many years. This is a different form of hard work. There's a lot of admin. There's a lot of office. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of dinners. There's a lot of things like that. I travel a lot. But to me, that's not hard work. And so it's nice I can enjoy my job and love that.
Hauling sheetrock up and down stairs is hard work.
You want to see this guy complain? Get him some sheetrock.
So how do you manage? You said your territory is the entire state of Montana. You're traveling. You're all over the place. I mean, Superior to Sydney is a long ways. How do you manage your work with your family? How does your family handle you being on the road?
It's time management. Time management is huge. Ever since I met my wife, I've been kind of in these roles. So she's kind of conditioned to know what she's getting herself into.
This is her normal.
It's kind of normal. Yeah. So we've structured our life in a way that she has help and support, and she's doing her own thing. And like I said, she's an entrepreneur. And so she's working just as hard, if not harder than I am. But yeah, it's time management. It's making sure it's on the calendar. Like if it's not on my calendar, it's probably not going to happen. So I have like a 2-minute rule. If I can't get it done in 2 minutes, just do it. If you can do it in 2 minutes, get it done type thing. And one of my old mentors, Arno, he told me that. He's like, if you can get it done in 2 minutes, just get it done. And that way it's not on your plate later. So having that ability to structure your life and have good time management is a big proponent.
How has the relationship with your kiddos been like? How have you been able to maximize time with them? I mean, you said time management, but take us through some of the challenges of that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the road typically 4 to 5 days a week sometimes. And so I've structured my life where typically I get home around like Friday-ish and I'm, home Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometimes Monday, depending on how my week goes. And so, especially lately, I've just really tried to be present with them. And so when I'm there, I'm not on my phone. I'm not working. I'm not on emails. I'm not doing the things that, for work purposes, I'm being very present in that time with them. And, I mean, my daughter is getting older. She's 9 years old now. And so she's starting to understand that dad's not always around. And, I still get the challenging of, the challenges of her crying when I leave. And that's hard for me. It's not easy, but it's also just a season. This is not a forever thing. This is where we're at today. And this is what we're doing this year, maybe. But it's not going to be a forever thing. And
do you have any dreams, aspirations of what future looks like for yourself and your family?
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of in a season where it's undecided right now about where we're going to do or where we're going to go, what we're going to do. There's definitely some opportunity for me in leadership in this current role that I'm in. And so I'm looking at some opportunities there. That might look like me moving to a different state. God forbid, leave Montana. Don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens there. And the good thing is with companies like this, you have a lot of opportunities on a national perspective. And so if you do want to move to a warmer climate, you do have those options. And if you're doing well at your job, typically they want to hire in-house and move you upwards instead of hiring outside. Right. And so there's always a lot of good opportunity there.
Mike, I'm thinking about your competition in the area. Obviously none of your competition is as good looking as you. So how much of an advantage is that on being a rep?
Yeah. So
wait, is this all natural or are you using your product? I mean, look at the guy.
I did get injected with Xeomin recently. So that is a true statement, but no, I think, this industry is filled with females, right? And so 95% of my clientele is female based, which is kind of nice. not going to lie. But no, I was raised by females too. So like when my parents got divorced, I lived with my mom and my sister growing up. And I just feel a lot more comfortable around females too. And so it kind of just makes it easy and nice. And there's no like testosterone and like this competition. It's more of like, how can I support you? And you can get into the emotional aspects of that a little bit too with your clientele.
Well, yeah, I started to put you on the spot there.
That's good.
It was obvious. We don't get good looking guys like in here too often. Mike, I guess what is the legacy that you hope you leave for your sales career, for your family? Take it any route that you want, but what are you trying to accomplish? What do you hope people remember about you?
Yeah, that's a pretty deep question. I think about these things quite frequently, and initially you want to just provide for your family, but much more than that, I got to lean on my faith and just hope that I'm leading my kids down the faith route of having faith in something bigger than themselves. And that's kind of my whole goal, is that they find and trust in the Lord, and that they, have that faith, because there's so many peaks and valleys in life. And when you go through those valleys, what are you going to fall back on? It has to be something bigger than yourself. And I just want to lead them down the right path and give them a sense of knowing who they are and what they stand for and what their purpose is. And that's what I want to leave behind.
Mike, as I'm sitting here, I'm looking at this book, this notebook, this journal you have in front of me, with this quote on the front: individually, we are formidable. Collectively, we are unstoppable. Obviously you're carrying around this book with that quote on the front. What does that mean to you, and why that?
Yeah. So this book was given to me by my previous RD, regional director, and she was my boss. And she's amazing, and she's really outgoing and really supportive. And so we'd have these team meetings, and she came out with these books. And it basically just states that, individually we can only do so much, but collectively as a team, if we're all on the same page, if we're all kind of flowing the same direction, then we can do much more. And so, she had a lot of those things that she would support us in. And she was really big on, growing and having motivation in your life and having these goals in your life, and also on a personal perspective and a professional perspective. And I journal in that all the time, and it's a good book. Thanks for pointing that out.
Mike, a couple more questions, and I know you're a busy guy. You got to get on the road.
Just got to go fix those jaw lines.
Yeah, sign me up for that. And I usually don't do this, so maybe this isn't a question. But I just want to say, it's maybe obvious to the audience that we're good friends, best friends, been in each other's lives a long time. But I just want to thank you for being a model of what it looks like to overcome obstacles, being a model of somebody that wants to grow continually, who wants to show up for their family and support them. And then most importantly, and this will lead into my question, you are the most loyal person I know, and a great friend. And so it's an honor to have you on the podcast as my best friend. But something I've been wondering, why are you so loyal? Why have you been so good to me over the years?
Well, thanks for saying all that. Yeah, Steven, I think, as you know, like we've been through a lot of ups and downs in our life. And I think early on, we didn't have a whole lot of faith in people around us. And so I've always kind of kept a really small circle, and you're either with me or you're kind of doing your own thing. But I have a very small circle, and the people that are in that circle, I would die for. And you're one of those guys that I would die for. And, it was an honor to be your best man at your wedding. And it's been so cool to see Steven grow the way that he has and where he's at today in his marriage and what he's doing in the business and doing the podcast with you, Brandon. And there's a lot of, it's just been really cool to see him grow in that. But I try to be loyal to the ones who are loyal to me and give that back in return. So thanks for saying all that.
Well, I can add to that. And thank you, Mike. I have to work with the guy. So thank you for your mentorship. Thank you for being loyal to him.
Hopefully I led him down the right direction for you.
So thank you. But seriously, it's very common, if not daily, weekly, for Steven to bring up a piece of advice or insight or something you shared with him. So I know it's not just him on the podcast, trying to say the right thing, like live it. And I see your influence in his life. And honestly, it impacts me because you're speaking into him and he's speaking into me. And so thank you for your friendship. Thanks for coming on. Just thanks for being real and genuine, and thanks for being loyal. Really, really appreciate that.
I appreciate you guys. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Hey, anything we didn't ask you that we should have?
You guys are pretty good at question giving. So
all right.
You guys are pretty solid with your questions.
All right.
You guys are doing great here, by the way. It's been cool to see how the podcast has grown, by the way, and you guys are doing great work here in Missoula and really putting a spotlight on Missoula and the communities here and the entrepreneurs and the business owners that are doing hard things out here. So congratulations on that.
Thanks, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula Podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.